Fresh faces on the block for Blue White Illustrated. No, not us. That's Nate Bauer, senior editor of Blue White Illustrated. I'm film analyst and host of the BWI Daily Edition, Thomas Frank Carr. But no, we're getting to meet officially, for the first time, several players that we have not had yet a chance to speak to as part of the media. That's what we're going to talk about today, the class of 2021. So, Nate, how are you doing this fine summer Monday? And once you fill us in on your weekend and all your plans and what you were doing, tell us, set the scene for us. What's coming up this week?
Yeah, so my weekend was great. How was your weekend? I got to visit some friends in the Hudson River Valley.
Ooh.
It was a getaway with kids. Like, we typically don't go. How do I put this? We typically don't go, like, we try to leave our kids with somebody else when we go away places.
Right.
Because you're never off, right? Like,
right.
I mean, my friend has a pool, and so, like, going to the pool with the kids is great, but not in any way relaxing. Like, there's no relaxation.
Now, instead of trying to keep them from, like, grabbing knives and throwing things at the wall, you're now preventing them from drowning, right?
Yeah, you have to keep these things alive. Like, it's like the primary goal of it. And so there's no vacation part of it. It's like,
right.
Oh, well, I hope that these people that we created don't ruin the house that we're going to visit, make our friends hate us, and then also don't kill themselves. Like,
yeah.
So in any case, we survived.
Low stakes vacation.
Yeah, it was great. We had a great time.
Now, the Hudson River Valley sounds like such a thing, right? So that sounds like a place in a plot of a novel. But is this New York, above New York City?
yeah, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's
New York is so pretentious, it has to name the things that lead to New York.
Well, look, like, there's a valley, and there's the Hudson River is there, and
yes.
Like, you think of West Point, right? So West Point is in that general vicinity. It's very beautiful. I mean, you've got the Catskills, kind of to the west. I believe it doesn't matter. The point to the east, actually. It's nice. It's very nice, but it's very far to get to from State College, Pennsylvania. So,
yeah,
we made it. We're alive. What was your weekend?
Nothing. Nothing.
Good.
Just nothing in general. But this coming weekend, so this is actually a good time to announce that the show's going to be taking a break Thursday and Friday, because for the first time since the show has started, I am taking a day off, which includes Christmas and every other holiday in between, Thanksgiving, Halloween. So yeah, we're off for the first time Thursday and Friday. So no mailbag show. We wanted to get you on the show early in the week so that we could have your regular appearance. But yeah, I am going to wine country. Just a quick couple day getaway before Memorial Day weekend.
When you say wine country, you mean Ithaca, New York?
Yes. I also wanted to sound fancy, so I said you're going to wine country.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, we were gonna go to the Outer Banks or something, and we were gonna go somewhere a little farther or more exotic, and then we were like, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And so I didn't grow up vacationing. I don't know how to do it. Like, we don't know. My wife is a homebody. Zoe does not like doing things. And I grew up not knowing how to vacation, so this is like a growing moment for us. This is the first vacation she and I have been on together since our honeymoon. So we just went back to the same place we went for our honeymoon. Like, we're super creative.
You'll be fine. It'll be great.
Oh, I know it'll be fine. Like, I always succeed at what I do. It's just getting up the gumption to do it. That's all.
So in any case, now that no one is listening,
listen, I don't care. It's May. If you can't sit through a couple of minutes of small talk and learn a little bit about Nate and me and our lives, then, like,
terrible.
That's all right. You probably weren't checking in May anyway.
Yeah.
But if you're here for the show, that's cool too.
We do, but we do have things coming. That's the point.
Yes.
Wednesday this week, Penn State has set up for the media the complete class of 2021, right? So the incoming freshmen from last year. So all the guys who just finished their freshman year, as you guys probably know, Penn State, really dating back to Joe Paterno, has had a policy that has not changed of preventing their first year players on campus from speaking to the media, right? Like it's not a bad policy, right? Like these guys, you do as a program, you don't want to put these guys in a position to say something that they don't mean or that could be misconstrued, what have you. And so by giving them a year in the program before getting into those media responsibilities, it allows them to practice, right? Like to get to get the news and notes, the cliff notes of what not to do, what to do during interview sessions. So, I think that you are, certainly Greg, we're all excited, right, about the opportunity to talk to some guys who, one, played last year, right, who we have not spoken to yet, and then guys who haven't played, guys who have not had that opportunity yet to really make a mark on the field, and very likely will, though, this season.
So let's take a look. And so the funny thing is they're freshmen from last season, but the way recruiting works is, Ryan and Greg and I are working on the class of 2023 right now. So there's the freshmen that are here that we won't be talking to until next fall. And then there are these freshmen that played last year, and then the freshmen that will be coming in this winter. So it's all very convoluted if you're not careful. So I just want to reset and reintroduce the class of 2021 to everyone. Here is the full list. Landon Tangwall was the highest ranked player in that group at left guard. Other notable players, actually most of this class is notable. Kalen King, Jalen Reed, Zachy Wheatley, Jamari Budden, Kobe King, Harrison Wallace, and then a couple of other guys, some interesting things in the class. Of course, Nate Bruce, Lonnie White Jr., both players that were projected to be big parts of the class that left the program really before anything started for either of them. In Lonnie White Jr.'s case, signing an MLB contract and opting to not go to college and not play football. So the full class of 2021 is there. Another thing to recap, this has been an interesting journey for this class. These are the players that did not have a senior season because of COVID. So I guess before we get into some of the other details and nuances, is that anything you're interested in of the last couple years for these guys? Because that's what's interesting to me is what's this been like to get to this moment for you, given everything that they've gone through? Because they took the brunt of all of that stuff that happened with COVID and canceling seasons.
Yeah. No, well, it's this class and the last class, right? So 2 classes ago, guys who got to Penn State and just didn't, right? Like they were in the program, but no part of it was anything resembling, right, like the baptism by fire that happens when you're a true freshman on campus, because they couldn't have practices in any way resembling normalcy, right? So for a lot of those guys, I think in terms of basketball, like Dalian Johnson's true freshman season at Penn State was just like a wash. And you can look through a lot of those guys. For Penn State, it was the exact same deal. So these guys, some of these guys would have had a senior season, but obviously, as you said, didn't have a senior season in high school, and then come to Penn State, and some of them are able to immediately play, right? Like Kalen King obviously was able to play right off the bat. And a couple of these other guys, Zachy Wheatley, right, had snippets, right, had some things that he was able to do. But yeah, that is going to be an area of, hey, how much value did you get, I think, from last season, right? Like, because it was starkly opposed to 2 years ago, where that class really got nothing from that year. Whereas last year, these guys probably did get something from that year. They probably were able, whether they played or not, they would have been able to go through something approximating or pretty close to normal practices, right? Like normal scout team work. So
Just in another quick reset to remind you the class of 2021. They're on 3, team rank 19th in the nation. This was considered a down year by a lot of people for Penn State. But really the size of the class, and this is what Ryan Snyder has beat the drum for a long time, is when you have a smaller class, classes like this tend to get lower ranked, but the average ranking of the players in the class was relatively the same. Their Big Ten rank was 4th as well. And you mentioned some interesting players in the class that we've already seen and some that are projected as starters coming up this next fall. Kalen King, Landon Tangwall, 2 players that are projected to start, and then competing for a starting job would be Kobe King, and I put this on here for you, Sander Sahadak at the kicker position. So lots of early returns on this class as well, Nate.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're among those players in particular, right? Landon Tangwall is someone who Penn State fans have been waiting for, right? It's difficult to make that projection of an offensive lineman coming in and having a huge impact right off the bat, but the elements were there, the flashes were there last season in the limited time that he did play to suggest or to lead to all of the optimism that exists for him this spring. Right? Like James Franklin, the things that James Franklin said about him, the coaching staff said about him this spring, are that the talent is obviously there. It's just a matter of getting those reps and getting those opportunities. I think that the fact that he missed a little bit of spring practice probably wasn't great for him. But yeah, I mean, there's still a ton of hype, right? For lack of a better word, a lot of optimism for what he's going to be able to do this season.
Yeah. And that's a group of, he's a big reason, and this is interesting from a redshirt freshman. He's a big reason I'm having a positive projection of the Penn State offensive line. The talent up front has the potential to be better, and that's a guy that, to bring it back full circle, somebody we're talking to for the first time. That's a rare thing to do for an offensive lineman as a redshirt freshman, which, by the way, quick side note, how do you keep 2020 and 2021 straight at all? Because if you look on the roster, I mentioned this in one of our roundtables this weekend, try to figure out who's a sophomore, who's redshirt junior, who's a whatever. I think even Penn State is almost on a case-by-case basis going through deciding what year they are in their eligibility.
Right. Yeah, no, it's difficult. Look, like there was a time where they tried to, create the perception that all of these guys had this opportunity to use the bonus year of NCAA eligibility, right? And so guys just didn't progress a class, even though they played, right? I think Kevon Lee is listed as a sophomore, period, true sophomore.
Yeah.
But it's just, that's just what it is. It's just such a, the more we get away from it, the less it's going to be front and center in our minds, I think, in our consciousness. But the impact and the ramifications of these 2 very weird, strange years are going to continue. And sorting out roster management is going to be part of that.
Yeah. Kalen King is listed as a sophomore, and so is Kevon Lee and Parker Washington, Keandre Lambert-Smith. They're all sophomores somehow.
Yeah.
The timeline has been, this is like all the Marvel movies now. The timeline has been absolutely broken. I don't understand what's going on.
But Kalen King is a sophomore because he played last year, and he doesn't get the bonus year. But Parker Washington in year 3, right? It's in any case. Strange times indeed.
A couple other players in this class that are interesting as well, that maybe aren't starters, but are definitely in the mix for playing time. Harrison Wallace, Zakee Wheatley, Jalen Reed, Kobe King. I mentioned him already, and that might be it. Those 3 players specifically. You could throw Jamari Budden in there as a player that might see the field, but he's currently behind Curtis Jacobs, so I wouldn't expect him to see significant snaps. But really, those 3 were, especially Wheatley and and Reed were part of a very strong contingent from the Michigan area. I'm sorry, Wheatley's from Maryland. But there was a strong contingent from Michigan in this class that were all in the secondary and that were really a strong presence. I'm interested to see how that whole situation has worked for them, kind of making that transition to Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, all of these guys, I think, you know, I haven't gotten the impression that there's been any issues, right? I mean, like certainly they have been people who the Penn State coaching staff has said very good things about, and it continues to be, or seems to be, a source of pride, I guess, within the program, right? That they've been able to have that type of recruiting success out of that area.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, to your point though, in terms of these second year players who they might not start, but you would absolutely expect them to be in the pecking order to have an opportunity to break through, like Christian Veilleux, right? Like
right.
he's not gonna
haven't mentioned yet, but very
guy we
important.
haven't mentioned yet. But exactly, I mean, this is a player who Penn State, is going to be counting on to be ready. Like that's the deal. Is he the starter coming into the summer or coming out of the summer when the summer ends? No, it's going to be Sean Clifford. We have a pretty solid understanding of that, but we also have a pretty solid understanding that Sean Clifford has had. There are reasons to believe it is difficult for him to make it through a season unscathed physically.
Yeah.
Right. And so when that happens, if that happens, this is the guy who you need to be ready for that moment. And he was last year, right? I mean, by the time that they actually got to him for that Rutgers game, he was ready. But with another off season, being able to prepare himself more, certainly there are signs from this spring of optimism that he's in a much better position than he had been, or that he would have, like that anyone would have expected him to be as a true freshman.
Yeah. And so it's interesting remembering the storylines of recruiting and how all these guys got here, which is what I was bumbling through a little bit earlier. But like that's trying to remember the class dynamics here, what makes up this class. And one of the things that you mentioned, Veilleux, one of the things I'm interested in is kind of going back to the recruiting process and getting to know these players, because from my perspective, I have a very poor understanding of this particular group because a lot of them didn't play a senior season, or they were not really, like there was issues, just because of COVID-19, seeing the games. But one player that I do, does have kind of a story that's interesting is Christian Veilleux, coming from Canada, playing in high school, and then as a guy learning American football, doesn't have a senior season, and then, goes through what he did getting to Penn State. What's that journey been like for him in learning the most complicated position in football? I'm always going to look at the film stuff. What are you interested in? What do you want to talk to these guys about? What do you want to learn from this group?
Yeah, I mean, I think the linebackers are of particular interest to me, right? Jamari Budden and Kobe King are both guys who I don't think they were discussed as probable starters this spring, but were discussed as they're going to play, right? Like they're going to be a part of the the plan, right? Like what Penn State wants to do defensively. And so how ready are they? How comfortable are they? Look, especially for guys who have only been in Penn State system for a year, to have that year and then have it upend it, right? Like, so you learn one thing for 12 months or in some cases less than 12 months, but you learn it and then, okay, that's all good and well. That was Brent Pry wanted to do. What does Manny Diaz want to do? Yeah. And how has that transition taken place? How has your understanding of what your responsibilities are, how has it shifted? How has it changed, and how comfortable are you with that? So no, I mean, I think certainly those are guys that I'm going to be paying attention to. And then, the other thing that I know you don't love to talk about, but Gabe Nwosu as a punter, and Sanders Heideck. Like,
yeah,
both of those guys could play this year. So how ready are they for that? What's their makeup, right? Like, how do they conduct themselves? Because you can tell, like, some guys, those guys, you have to have a certain way about you to fulfill a position where, for however many plays it is a game, 5 plays a game, everybody in that stadium is looking at you and
yeah,
only at you, right? Like, that's a big deal, right? And
yeah.
sometimes it takes some time to get to that point, but Penn State's certainly going to hope that both, either one or both of those guys are going to be ready to be able to fulfill that this year.
And think about too how many players are directly responsible for points. You
Yeah,
know, so on a football team, only a few players score points, and the kicker is one of the most integral parts of scoring the maximum possible points. And yeah, it's something that's like, it's one of those things I always just shrug my shoulders and like, yeah, it's important. I don't know, like, there's a mystery of the universe about kicking. Because you can see a guy that's got a big leg and is just super inconsistent and all the talent in the world. I always think about, like, Robert Aguayo went from Florida State in the second round of the NFL draft and was one of the worst kickers in the NFL, but was phenomenal at Florida State. So, like, the idea of understanding, even for professionals who know what they're looking at, understanding kickers and what happens there is an inexact science. All of this can be an inexact science, but there's less certain areas, and kicker is one that is just a high level of uncertainty. But other than quarterback, the only person that is directly responsible for points on every drive is the kicker, at the very least, with the extra point.
Yep. How about one name that we haven't talked about yet, but I'm sure you're going to be interested in speaking to, is Jordan Vandenberg on the defensive line.
Yeah, that's another one with an interesting story of how he got to Penn State. His whole story of, I believe, coming from South Africa and playing community college, and then he committed to Penn State in the middle of the summer, but was a freshman. So it was just a very unique story, and that whole thing, and truthfully, like, where he fits on the defensive line and how Manny Diaz plans to use players there. Yeah, I'm super interested in talking to Jordan Vandenberg, other than the fact that every time I see him, he's happy to see me. That's always nice.
Why is that?
He likes the show. He's a fan of the show.
Oh, wow.
It's funny. Nice. I don't know if I've told this story on air, but before I was here at Blue White Illustrated, I was doing my own show on my own YouTube channel, and I did a video breakdown of Jordan from his tape at community college. And one of the things I said is super explosive, is clearly strong upper body strength. And I was going through all the things that I liked about him. And I said, the one thing I can tell, though, is he doesn't have great lower body strength right now. And needs to work on that at Penn State. And then I got a message on the YouTube video from Jordan saying, hey, this is Jordan Vandenberg. Want you to know I was playing with a knee injury. I'm very strong. And I was like, I didn't know that. Thanks for the information. So that's really how he's a fan of the show, is finding the original video, I think.
You jerk.
I know.
How dare you?
Things you say on the internet, people sometimes find. That's, it's a scary thing. And that's always the thing I think people don't realize is, like, people in the comments want you to trash every single person that you talk about, because apparently leaving a comment means you're angry enough at somebody that you want them to pay for whatever feeling that they made you feel. But then you've got to, like, if you're on this side of the camera, then you've got to live with the fact that those people heard that. And then you got to work with them. And obviously, as a journalist and as a film analyst, that's something we have to do. But it's not like we're going to come on here and be terrible, awful people about it, right? Like, you don't want to have that working relationship with anybody, but let alone people that you need to work with in the future.
I mean, I think it's important to note that we don't say mean things about people off the air either.
That's a good point. We don't say mean things about people. That's a good point.
Because why? Do unto others. Anyway, there's one last group that I thought we should talk about, which is Harrison Wallace and Liam Clifford, right?
Yeah.
At receiver. Penn State's got a situation where we have a pretty good understanding right now that Mitchell Tinsley is going to be part of it.
Yep.
Parker Washington, pretty obviously, and Keandre Lambert-Smith. They're all right there, right? Like they're all going to play and they're all going to see a ton of reps. And then there's that next step down of right, who else is going to fill in the gap? And certainly Harrison Wallace is a guy who I think that there are some expectations, right? Of hey, you've first of all, two-sport athlete, right? And had been recruited as a basketball player as well. And so to make that transition and just have a year concentrating only on football, what has that done for him? Because really from the earliest stages of when he arrived at Penn State, there were kind of rumblings, I would say, that like the athleticism and that portion of his game really shined. Those things came through. Is that he just had a natural knack. Say that fast. For right catching the football, making plays. And so whether or not he had a true comfort level in the offense, the suggestion is that he didn't. But okay, now he's had a year. Now he's had that opportunity. What type of an impact can he make in the receivers room and on the offense as a whole? Can he create a different dynamic maybe from what Penn State has had there otherwise?
Yeah. And it's an interesting situation when you look at the positional distribution at the receiver positions. But talk about saying that 5 times fast. You've got Tinsley, Mega, and Keandre Lambert-Smith. Those are your 3 boundary receivers. You still, at this point, only have Parker Washington that's like a true slot receiver that isn't a true freshman. Some of the guys, Amari Evans, Caden Saunders, are more interior players than pure outside players. Harrison Wallace is a boundary receiver. I think some people think of him as a slot receiver, but he is a big, athletic, and the vertical is what you talk about, the athleticism. I think that's the part that really separates him, is that vertical leap and the ability to play above other players on the football field. That ability down the field is what Penn State needs. In Mike Yurcich's offense, wanting to push the ball up the field, you need to have receivers that you can throw the ball up to. And Mega may be 6'4", and Keandre Lambert-Smith may have a big catch radius, but if they don't play that size in contested catch situations, this is where I think Harrison Wallace really can do his damage, is he can push those 2 for playing time. Because it's really the other 2 spots to me are locked. It's that third position, the other boundary receiver. There's 3 guys that can play there. And he has the ability to push those first 2 to see the field.
Yeah, it's just funny, though, because I think that we talk about it and think about it so much that there are just assumptions made as to what the level of talent will be from those 3 guys. But you don't know. You just
right,
and that includes in practice, right? Like even through the course of the season, you get feedback and start to understand, who looks good, who doesn't, right, or who has some inconsistencies, and that's fine. That is fine to get that feedback, and it's fine to get that understanding. But there is just a massive difference between doing it in practice and having some level of consistency in practice versus, hey, you have a pretty good understanding that you're going to be a rotational player in games, okay? Can you maximize, legitimately, this is what we're talking about, can you maximize the 2 times a game that somebody's going to throw the football to you?
Yep.
Right? Like, because that's what it is. You get 2 shots. And what are you going to do with those 2 shots, those 3 shots? Can you be a person who changes the dynamic of the game in a positive way for your offense,
or just catches the football? Like in certain situations, catch the football.
Yeah.
I tend to focus on getting wide open and breaking tackles and doing more for the offense than what is designed. But at the very minimum, you should be catching the football, even if it's just catch and go down. If you're on the field and you're targeted, catch the football. The other thing that's interesting is, and I've been digging into some more of Sean Clifford tape and looking at some situational football with him. The type of receivers on the field are I think, as important as their skill level or what skills they have. So on the flip side, this will be the last thing I said about Harrison Wallace. Can he get open? Because Sean Clifford generally only throws to receivers that are open. He doesn't typically throw the ball into traffic. And if you're a guy that you make your living off being a big-bodied possession guy that fights for the football in the air, you might not see those reps, which is why I think the tight ends have been a little bit underutilized. And that kind of folds into the narrative of who's getting targets, why are they getting targeted. So if Harrison Wallace doesn't have a big year, we can look through some of the things and try to pinpoint why. But all that wrapped up in just this particular class. So last call for other players you're interested in learning more about coming up on Wednesday.
Townley and McGraw. And then that is literally the last call, right?
Yeah.
But just two defensive ends at a position that needs it, right?
Yeah.
So is there a surprise there? Is somebody ready to insert? Just being blunt, I think that you would probably echo this sentiment. We didn't hear their names a lot this spring, right? Like just even as potential, oh, hey, maybe they're going through something, but when they come back in the summer, what have you, whatever the situation is, there wasn't a lot of that. And so with that being the case, where are they, right? Where are they in their development? Where are they as potential, contributors there at a spot that I don't think that there's any question it's needed.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, for sure. Especially with Zariah Fisher going down, that from a numbers perspective too, somebody had to step up in the spring. Now here's what I'll say. If you want to know how I feel about those two players, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com on the Lions Den message forum. I had a conversation about both of them recently there. And if you want to have a conversation with Nate, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com on the Lions Den message forum. To get there, you need to sign up and be a premium subscriber. Here's the good news. It's $1 for a year's worth of access. So next May, you're going to be hitting the summer, and you will have just completed a full year of Penn State football for $1. Great time to sign up.
Great deal. Do it. Tell your friends.
You're a great deal, Nate. You're a great deal of help here on the show, and I appreciate you. Thanks.
Oh, stop.
That'll do it today for the BWI Daily Edition. Don't forget, coming up tomorrow, the recruiting show. Some big news is circling around, some movement in the class of 2023. Some announcements coming up soon. Ryan is back from vacation, I think, and he'll have more on all of that. So stay tuned tomorrow to the BWI Daily Recruiting Show on Tuesdays. I'll be back on Wednesday to round out a short week for us. We'll talk to you then.